Today is Wednesday, March 14th, 2012. Joe Turner and myself, Judy Meyer, are talking to Darold Woodcock. Is that correct? Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes.
And Darold, let me ask you, where were you born?
Born in Pine Lawn, Missouri, when it was okay. And, well, that's where I was born.
And where'd you go to school?
Went to school. My first 3 grades were in a little one-room schoolhouse at Bacon Ridge.
Bacon Ridge?
Yeah, Missouri.
Well,
Which is just out of Sullivan.
So you moved away from Pine Lawn?
Well, it was in the middle of the Depression. You know, I was born in '29, and so we moved. I think Dad lost his job or something, so then we moved with some relatives. Well, not at first, but we moved out in the country, you might say, and nice house and everything. But when I was 2 or 3, I can remember back when I was a little kid in diapers playing on the concrete front porch.
And this was in Bacon Ridge?
No, this was on Acid Mine Road out of Sullivan.
Wow, Acid Mine
Yeah.
Road.
Well, it was an old iron mines, not right where we were, but a couple miles from us. And the road was called Acid Mine because there was a lot of, they come across a lot of acid of some kind in there.
Well, that's something you can
Yeah.
kind of stays with you.
Yeah, so then I spent my young life there, and then our relatives out there that we lived with owned a 120-acre farm, and we bought that from them when they moved back to East St. Louis at that time, which was a good place, and so we bought the farm from them, and then from the, you know, I grew up, I went to the 1st grade, there wasn't any kindergarten. I went to the 1st through the 3rd grade there. And it was way out in the country in a one-room school, all 8 grades in the same room.
Wow.
With nothing but a pot-bellied stove in the middle of the room. And we would all, in cold weather, we would sit on old wooden benches, like a wash bench or something around, put them around that stove, and we'd sit there all day and have school in our heavy coats and boots or anything we had to stay warm.
Did you as a young kid ever say, why do I need to suffer through this and just stay home?
No. I didn't know any different at the time, you know.
You didn't know you had any other options?
No.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had a brother, one brother.
And his name is?
Rollin.
Is he older or younger than you?
Older, 3 years older.
I believe we did talk to Rollin one time. He lives here in Bridgeton,
Yeah.
correct? Yes, I believe we did talk to him. And so he was in the same school, in the same room you were in?
Yes.
How did that work out?
Well, that worked fine. We had the desk, 2 people at a desk. You know, they were pretty wide. And my brother and I, 1 year at least, the 2 of us sit together. So we always got along real good, so that wasn't a problem. The only problem was it was 1.25 miles from home through the woods, but on a gravel road as such, and had to wade a creek, pretty good sized creek, and at wet weather creek it didn't always have water in it, but and then we would walk back and forth to school. Can you imagine, 6 years old, walking back like that? In the winter time, my brother and I did it one time at 20 below zero.
Oh my gosh.
And then found out there was nobody there.
Oh no. You didn't get the call. School was called.
No. Oh.
And your route was
we had a
uphill both
telephone.
ways.
No.
Pardon?
Your route was uphill both ways also.
Don't give him any ideas.
But
No
anyway.
telephone.
We went to the teacher was staying with a family up the road a ways that we knew. So we went up there, got her out of bed.
Oh
And I said, what are you kids doing up here? You know, it's 20 below. I said, we're not having school today. So anyway, so then my brother and I ran home, and just a little 6-year-old kid, you know, and it was snow on the ground.
Oh
and
my
everything.
gosh.
And another thing about that school had outside gyms,
Yeah, outhouses.
outhouses,
Or what did you call it?
outhouse.
Okay.
Yeah, and but anyway, that's about it. There is one thing that I'd like to add. In the wintertime and during the rainy season, my brother and I would go with my dad, and we'd walk up and down this creek in the woods, and we'd come to a place where it was deep, but the shores were high, you know, cut pretty high up, and he would cut a tree down and fall it across the creek, but wouldn't cut it all the way off, you know, and fall it across the creek, cut the limbs off, and then stretch a big heavy wire across so we could hold onto a little bit, you know. And we'd walk that log, and that water would just be boiling through there, and you know, we'd be drowned for sure, you know. And it was, you know, maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 foot deep and just roaring through there. And we walked back and forth across that. I never will forget that. You know, today, it wouldn't even cross anybody's mind to do that.
I think you could get sued for child endangerment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I will never forget the last time I used it. I went home from school, and I don't remember why it was, but anyway, I had to cross that log.
By yourself?
And yeah, by myself. You know, a little 6, 7-year-old kid way out in the wood, and it was covered with ice. It had been raining, and it froze. And it was covered with. I was scared to death. So.
But you're here.
Well,
Yeah.
let him finish the story.
So I wrapped my legs around that thing and scooted along very carefully. And can you imagine doing that today?
No.
And
Sounds like something they do on one of those extreme warrior ninja shows.
yeah. And then we.
Did your dad walk across it?
Oh, he did first. Yeah, to see if it was all right.
Okay.
Solid,
You tested it out. So this was about in Sullivan, Missouri, you say?
Yeah, it was about 3 miles out of Sullivan, northeast of Sullivan.
The people you lived with, did they have children? The family you lived
Oh,
with?
no, yeah, they did, but they were old. It was my mother's aunt, and they were retired, and her grandfather had built the place, and he'd retired from East St. Louis. He'd worked for Swiss Packing Company, and he retired out there, and so we lived with, and by then it was my aunt and her husband owned the place, and we were real close to them.
I see.
So we lived with them for a while, and then they moved back to East St. Louis, like I said, and we bought the farm.
So how old were you when you came, or you left Sullivan? Let's put it that way.
I guess I was 9 years old, because I finished the 3rd grade there.
And what
And
happened
then we
then?
came to Maryland Heights, a nice house, and
what brought you back into the St. Louis area?
work. Dad found a good regular job, you know, and so he finally stayed. For a long time, he worked in St. Louis, stayed in St. Louis, and then came home every weekend.
Oh, I see.
So-
So you and your brother and your mom stayed in Sullivan, and he would work here and just come back and forth like on weekends?
Yeah.
Did he have a car?
He had a car, but of course there were old cars back then. We're talking in the 30s, you know. And he never had a new one then either back then. And yeah, he had a car, but he was took a lot of maintenance. And then he had to cross the same creek on a different road from Sullivan, well, on the Aspen Mine Road. And if the water was up, if it rained, you'd have to ford that. And sometimes it would be up over the running boards and that, and those old cars, they drowned it out real easy. And sometimes it couldn't drive across, we'd have to get out and hold hands.
Oh,
And but you know, we never knew any difference, and we were happy, and I had decent parents. My mom had been a school teacher out there, and she graduated from high school out there. We lived fine, but I often think of my mother now, a young woman out there with two little boys, all by herself. And our closest neighbor was a half mile away, and that was through the wood, you know. And we had a telephone, it was an old crank type, and it was down about half the average storm they had. It was down, you know. And but anyway, no, we lived a pretty good life. But I feel sorry for her now, because you know we really had it was hard living, and she was raised in the city. So, well, of course, she lived out there too when she was a young girl and graduated from Sullivan High School. But
So when you came to Maryland Heights, then where did you and your brother go to school?
went to Maryland Heights.
Oh,
And for my fourth grade, I was in Maryland. We were in Maryland Heights, had a decent house and everything. And
how was the situation changed? Did you have an indoor bathroom?
yes, we
Was
did.
that a real nice
You know,
thing?
I don't remember it.
You
no.
don't remember that? See, I think if it was a girl, you'd remember that.
But I don't remember having an outhouse, so it must have been inside.
Okay.
But and we had electricity out in the country. We never had electricity or running water.
And the school was a lot different here, correct?
Oh yes, it's a regular, relatively modern school.
And
you know.
so now you were separated from your brother into a different
Yes.
room?
Oh, yes. But of course, we'd made a lot of friends during the summer with some of the local kids before school started that year, and so it was fine. Everything worked fine.
And then did you graduate from high school?
Yes, I did.
And
but
what high school?
Pattonville,
What year did you graduate?
47.
You know, I missed asking you what year you were born.
1st of June, 1929.
1929, okay. So you graduated from Pattonville in what year?
1947.
1947.
And of course, we lived there, only lived in Maryland Heights 1 year.
Oh,
And then we rented this house, and then the people that owned it, I think she got remarried, so they wanted their house back. So then we moved to Pattonville on Raymond Avenue,
oh, okay.
right next to the Birches. Did you ever hear the Birches?
Yeah, there's a
Dr. Birch.
street named Burgess, right?
Yeah, and so we lived there for several years, right there. And then the same thing happened to a woman. And she was a widow, and she got remarried after several years and wanted her house back. So that's when we moved from there to Edwards, actually D. Runce Avenue. Well, you know where Edwards is off of Fifi?
There again, that's Maryland Heights, right?
Yeah, actually we were in Maryland Heights School District, but that was my senior year. So I got permission to continue at Pattonville.
So they had their own high school? Maryland Heights
Oh,
had a
yes,
separate
yes.
high school?
Oh, yeah. Mhm. But I had gone to school all since the 5th grade, and so they let me continue and my last year and graduate from Pattonville.
Real nice. What did you do while you were in high school as far as outside activities? Did you work part-time anywhere?
I worked since I was about 12 years old, and I worked part-time at Brannige's until after I graduated. And Brannige's, by the way, at that time was a general store.
We just talked to Jack Brannicky last week. Who ran the store when you were working?
Well, back then it was 3 different units. It was all together, one building, but 3 different units. Harry Brannicky ran the grocery store, and Oliver Brannicky ran the hardware store, and Walter Brannicky had the dry goods store, if you will, along with the post office, a little post office.
So which one did you work for?
I worked for Harry in the grocery store.
Oh, okay.
And he had a daughter, Susan, and a son, everybody knows him as Pete. And we had a good time. Anyway, and we used to deliver groceries all over.
You did? So you had to have a car then?
No.
No?
They had an old international delivery truck.
Oh,
And when I was 15 years old, one winter day, I was the only one available, except to check out people. And so I had to make a delivery way over the other side of Dorset Road, back in, anybody remember the old brick factories on the other side of Dorset Road? They used to make bricks over there.
Where, like Progress Parkway or something like that?
Yeah, back in there, right, take Fifi Road, and then right across from Fifi Road, way in the back, it goes down.
Yeah.
There used to be a big brickyard down in there. But anyway, I had to deliver some groceries to some old couple down in there. And I was only 15 years old. I didn't have a driver's license or anything.
Did you know
I didn't know
how to drive?
So I got in that old truck, and it was icy. I got in that old truck, and I drove it over the delivery.
By yourself?
Groceries by myself.
And were some of the groceries eggs?
Pardon?
Were you carrying eggs also?
Were there
delivering-
eggs in the
Oh,
groceries?
yeah. And then on the way back, right at Dorset and Fifi, I turned on Fifi and was coming down that hill there, just a little ways from Dorset. And there was some guy walking down the middle of Fifi Road. And he was evidently inebriated.
In the middle of the day?
And, oh yeah. And,
Or
well, this wasn't in the middle of the day,
towers.
this was later in the evening, you know, after school.
Oh, okay, at late
It was still
afternoon.
daylight, but
Okay.
barely, did dusk.
Okay.
And, well, I couldn't stop that thing, it was
Oh,
solid ice.
no.
And here I didn't know how to drive, but I had ridden with guys long enough that I knew how to gear that thing down and so forth, and I finally kept it under control and got around the guy and came on in.
Oh, I bet that was nerve-wracking.
Yes, it was, I haven't forgotten it, I tell you.
So did you
But
wait-
yes, I worked for Harry there for years and years. And I also worked for Ernest Pesci.
What did he do, or what was that?
Well, he was, I guess, an immigrant from one of the eastern countries. And he had been an artillery sergeant in, I don't know, Polish or something, some country there. And he brought his mom over, and he could speak English and that. But anyway, he eventually owned a lot of land. He was a contractor, built a lot of those houses along Midland and Maryland Heights.
Oh,
And right there, before you get to Midland and the creek, there used to be he used to own a pretty good sized building there, like a storage place or something, and some other things. And there used to be a barn there that he built. Yeah. And anyway, I worked for him, and I built fences down. I don't know if you lived here when you were younger, Myers. There was a Meyer on off of Oak Avenue, I forget.
no, I'm not related.
Yeah. Anyway, I built. If you go down Fifi, you know where George Weber lives.
Yes.
Well, down right next to George Weber's, there's a road that goes down the hill, and Brandy's built a lake down there. But anyway, this year I was working for all summer long for Ernest Pesci, and I put a fence. I was just a kid, and I worked by myself. Put a fence all the way from Fifi Road all the way and through that bottom and up the hill. I had to cut a right of way and dig a hole for the post, set the post.
Where was your brother? Why
Took the
wasn't
one.
he helping you
Oh,
with
he
this
was-
project?
Oh, he was working too. I don't remember just what he was doing then, but he was working too also, you know.
I think he told us he worked at Westlake Amusement Center. Did you ever work there?
I didn't work there, but I got a story to tell about that too.
Okay.
That's where we held our school picnics
Oh,
for
uh-huh.
years. And I worked, a whole bunch of us kids worked for bankers, Ed Banker. They're in Banker Lane.
What did you do for Ed Banker?
Well, we,
That would have been Ed Banker who lived on the other side of Highway 7.
yeah, the senior, yeah.
Senior,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
And, but up on the hill, on the other side of the road, on the north side, I guess it would be, up on the hill there was a cherry orchard.
Oh,
Okay.
And,
This is on near Natural Bridge Junction, then, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would pick cherries in the spring, and I went right through then to apples, and then later in the summer to picking potatoes. They'd go through and plow up a row of potatoes, and we'd go on our hands and knees and pick them up and put them in crates. And we'd just get really dark tan, and I'm paying for it now. But anyway, we used to do that and just have a good time. And then we would ride out there on our bicycles, of course. And if we had one, and my brother and I rode one.
You shared a bicycle?
Yeah, well, I rode the handlebars the bar. And we did that for a long time. And then every day on the way home, we had a season pass to the Westlake swimming pool. And we would swing in the Westlake and go swimming for about a half hour, and then come out and go home, have supper.
That sounds like a full day to me.
Oh yeah, I used to work for a guy on old St. Charles Road too.
What's his name?
It's a real common name around here. And we started really early in the season picking raspberries for them and for him. And he had a barn right along Old St. Charles Rock there, and us boys we'd be out there way before daylight.
Wow.
Getting our trays ready and everything, And by daylight, by the time he got there, we were ready to pick,
Well, let me ask you, when you were working for this man on Old St. Charles or at Banker, did they pay you in cash?
Yes.
Did they pay you daily?
Yes.
What did you boys do on your handlebars on your bike? What'd you do with your money, may I ask? Just give us an idea what young boys, might have done with their earnings.
Oh, saved it. You gotta remember, we weren't paid much in those days. If I made $1 a day, I really
That was a lot.
had a pretty good day.
Were you supposed to give any money to your mom and dad?
Oh, yeah, we always did.
That's
Paid
what I
rent
was wondering.
As long as we lived there. It wasn't something we had to do. They were just getting us used to having to do that. So, yes, we did. And
You had a little allowance to spend? No?
since I was 12 years old, I was on my own as far as money goes, to include buying a school clothes.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, what did you do when you graduated then? You graduated from Pattonville in 1947.
And what did Pattonville High School look like at that point, and where was it located?
I was looking at a picture of it earlier. It was up in the hill where that one is, or the building is now. But it was on this side, the west side, and.
West side of what?
Pardon?
West side of
What street was it on?
I don't know. Whatever that street is that goes up, you pull in there now to go up.
Creve Coeur Mill Road?
No.
Creve Coeur Mill Road
Oh,
is
no,
where
no,
Pattonville?
no, it wasn't.
Across from
This was
Northwest
up across from Northwest Plaza.
Oh, okay, Banks?
Yeah.
Okay, where the middle school is right now, Holman Middle School. Is that what you're referring to?
I
Across
guess
from
that is
Northwest
up on the hill
Plaza?
there. Yeah, I guess that is a middle school, yeah. And,
I think they call it the Learning Center now, don't they?
Okay.
but it was an older building, but it was a great place. We all loved it, Had good teachers. And it was considered a decent school, and it still is.
How many were in the class that you graduated?
29,
29.
yeah. And a couple of them had joined the service before they graduated. Sandy Reed, you ever hear of the Reeds? There's Sandy, and then his brother, can't think of his name, David. And they both went. Well, Sandy went in a merchant marine, and I don't know what David went. He went into either the Navy or merchant marine too. And they were in for several years in merchant marines, and which was pretty dangerous during the middle of the war.
And this was World War II.
Yes.
Now, when you graduated, World War II was over, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So what did you do after graduation?
I graduated, I already had my application in several places, and I got a job with the Army Records Center down on Goodfellow Boulevard there at the old small arms plant.
Right.
And I was there until 49, and all the GIs were coming back, and they had preference for hiring. So I got released, and a GI took my job, you know, and which was okay with me, because I was ready to move on anyway. And so then I piddled around, and I worked for a gas station on Lambert for a while, people I knew, and where I traded all the time, good friend with them.
Where was that on Lambert?
I can't remember.
Was it in the area of Natural Bridge, or was it?
Oh, it was south of Old St. Charles Road
Okay,
on the west side.
so
It
before
was-
Dorset then?
Yeah, it was a shell site. Oh, it was after before Dorset, yeah.
Did you have a car for
Yes, I
yourself
did.
that you drove to the Goodfellow place?
Yes, I did. At that time, I had a 38 Plymouth Coupe in pretty good shape. Of course, that 10, 12 years old or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I remember that, and I carried another girl that I went to school with, worked down there. She was a grade ahead of me, and she, I drove her down there, and one time we went over Handley Road. We used to cut through sometime depending on the weather and the roads then. And we went down Handley Road, and it was solid ice. And I don't know how many times we spun, and it was still a hill going down, you know, so we kept on spinning. We ended up heading the right direction, we just kept going.
You had a lot of little skirmishes on ice in your life.
Oh, yeah. You know, the weather has changed dramatically here from then. I should have brought this picture. I have some old pictures of our house we built in 1950.
Well, perhaps Joe can get them from you, and we can make copies or scan them
That would be great
into
if
the
you're
computer.
kind enough to loan us to.
And
When you were working at this filling station, you say,
Yeah.
was it like a full-time job?
yes, it was.
And what did you do there? Did you do
Oh.
any car repair?
No, just pumped gas, wiped windshields, checked oil. They did all that stuff then. But it was just a temporary,
To get you through?
till I was trying to decide what to do. And you have to remember that the draft board from World War II didn't stop at the end of the war. It went on for another year or two afterward. And then, and all that time, I was too young to be drafted. And I would have enlisted when I was 17, but my folks had to sign for me, and they wouldn't do that because my brother was in the Navy. So, and then after they quit the World War II draft, then things kind of warmed up over in the Far East. And then they started to draft again a couple of years later. And a lot of my friends were drafted in the Army and so forth. And another friend of mine, Melvin Schroeder, or Schroeder, and he was in my class all those years, and I was a friend we run around with. And we decided, we've waited long enough, and at the moment we were trying to decide which direction we were going to start out in, and we got the heck with it, we're just going to join the Air Force. So we joined the Air Force back in December 7th, 1950.
December 7th, 1950.
Yeah.
And so what was going on in 1950? Was that Korea that was?
Yes, it was.
the flare
Yeah.
up?
The war in Korea started in June 1950.
Oh, so you were right in time for that.
Right.
So where did that lead you then? Your
Well,
military?
went to San Antonio to Lackland Air Force Base for training, basic training. And then one of the things you do in basic is sign some paper, look some tests like, and then say what's your preferences as far as occupation goes and so forth. And so I wanted to be an airborne radio operator and electronics. And 4 weeks after I got there in the middle of the winter, I was gone.
What do you mean
I was
gone?
really, I was gone. I left boot training. I didn't really have any basic training much, and I was gone down to Keesler Air Force Base down in Biloxi, Mississippi, for technical school. And I was down there almost a year.
So they told you, you are leaving here and going,
Oh yeah. Well, one day they handed me some orders, you know.
and how old were you at that time? About 20?
21. And
What happened to your friend, Melvin?
he was still at Lackland training, and then he finally got sent to and I'm not just sure where he went, tech training. He ended up being a propeller mechanic on prop-driven planes, particularly B-29s. So, well, anyway, and I went from, after graduating from Keesler, graduating from radio school, they asked for volunteers for flight duty. Hey, that's why I joined the Air Force. I love flying. And,
Had you ever flown in an airplane before you went into the military service?
oh yeah. If you got time, I'll tell you about that.
Okay.
When I was, say, 12 years old, if I wasn't working, I'd ride my bicycle over to the airport to the old terminal building. It was on the north side of the field at that time. And there was a fence out there, and a big concrete apron between the building and the fence where people would go out there on weekends and sightsee and all this, and the guys would bring their girlfriends out there and go for a ride, take them for a ride. And these planes, most of them would haul 4, 5, 6 people. But usually it was just a guy and his girlfriend that were going up. So the pilots got to know me, so I was over there so often. They got to know me and said, "Hey kid, I got an empty seat, you wanna go?" "Yeah." And I'd run over, I might go up 5, 6, 7 times a day.
Really?
Yeah.
And you were what, like a young teenager?
Oh yeah, about 12 years old.
No parental permission, written permission or anything?
I never have told my mom.
You
If you told
Oh,
your parents
yeah.
everything you did, you wouldn't get to do it again.
Yeah, and then,
Did you even know who these pilots were? Or where were they going? Just
not personally, but then later, when I had friends that at the Creve Coeur Airport. I forget what those guys' names last were. Newroth and 2 brothers, and they had planes out there. And once in a while, I'd go out there and go for a ride. And then another kid had a plane out of the old Kratz airfield out here off of Natural Bridge. And if he was out there, I'd go out there and, "Hey, let's go for a ride." Okay, and we'd go up.
So you really did have a history of aviation, actually,
Oh,
as
yeah.
a young boy. Okay, that was more than a lot of people probably ever had.
Yeah, and then I was up in open cockpits. Didn't make any difference, whatever. You know, I loved it. And I was in high school, and I remember, and I was telling this to somebody else the other day, my senior year, I kind of had a hard time staying interested in school. I guess everybody does. And I watched out the window, and that was World War II, and those fighters that come from Lambert and zoom right over to school, you know. I'm looking out the window, and you know, and that's all, and kids doodle and that, and since I got books and papers from when I was just a little kid in grade school, and I was drawing pictures of airplanes and everything, so anyway, when I got through radio school, well then I volunteered for flight duty, and they told me, you know, you'd be on B-29, you'd go over to Korea for sure. I don't care, that's why I joined the Air Force, is be in the air. If I wanted to be on the ground, I'd join the Army, you know. But anyway, yeah, went over there and went on B-29s, and we flew a full mission, or 25 missions over Korea.
Wow.
Shot down once.
You were shot down once?
Shot down once, shot up a lot of times, but finally made it. And
Were you ever injured?
I wasn't but we had 4 guys on our crew on mission that got shot up
Oh.
really bad. And we had to make we thought a crash landing. When I say shot down, we were over the Yalu River, separating Manchuria from North Korea. And it was the Chinese and Russians, we found out later, shooting at us from across the river over in Manchuria. But we were going right up the river. And there were 300 large caliber anti-aircraft guns there. And we used to call it running the gauntlet.
Running the gauntlet.
And it was a gauntlet because they lost a lot of planes up there. I got a book that one of the guys wrote. And he's talking about that. And we'd go in the briefing before a mission, and they'd have a big map on the wall, you know, in the Quonset hut. And they would pull the curtains back like that, and the guys would see the course markings. And, oh, growing up, some guys would get physically sick and vomit just sitting there because it was bad. And it was 225 miles behind the lines. And they were shooting our guys. If you bailed out and made it, they were shooting our guys on the spot anyway, so. But anyway, we got, it was our 13th mission. We had 13 men on board. We were 13th in a line going across the target. It was Friday the 13th, and our engineer forgot his lucky piece. And I don't know what else, but all that happened to us on Friday the 13th. And we fell. You see movies where planes come spiraling down. We fell for 2 miles like that, and all in the middle of the night. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, in fact. And they had us caught in the searchlights, and the fighters were shooting us up and everything. And finally, we fell far enough that they turned the searchlights off of us onto other planes, and the fighters broke off. And I was standing in the hatch, and I was looking down, ready to bail out. And I was looking down at the Yalu River, and oh man, if I stay with the plane, I'm dead. If I bail out, I'm dead, you know? And no way to escape and evade and try to get back to our lines at 225 miles up there. But September, middle of September, it was getting pretty cold up there. And well, anyway, we did that, had 4 guys wounded, all oxygen instruments, everything was shot out, radio shot out, the pilot's instruments were shot out, and taking up your time. But
No, this is fun.
But the pilots, and once we got them pulled out, and that's what I said, I was in the hatch making up my mind, should I or shouldn't I jump out? About that time I felt the plane kind of straighten out and just start pulling out. And so I hesitated, and sure enough, they pulled that thing out, and we zoomed back up to 20,000 feet, but all the oxygen tanks in the plane had been shot out. So we didn't have any oxygen except had some carry-around bottles like you clamp on your parachute harness. If you had to go out into Bombay, which I've done with the doors open at 25,000 feet, but you couldn't wear your chute out there because there wasn't room when you went out there. You just had to hold on. But anyway, well, we had red lights on all 4 engines, and the pilots hollered, "Give us a heading," and the navigator and I looked at each other, and the only thing we had was a magnetic compass left. That's all. It's 180 degrees. We didn't know where we was at, except we were wanting to go south. And so that's what we did. And so we kept flying south. We zoomed up to 20,000 so we'd have time to put the chutes on these guys that are wounded so bad and be able to throw them out, you know, when the engine, because we had 2 engines out for a while, and all 4 of them had the red lights on them. So they were gonna lock up just any time, so we were trying to get as far south as we could before we bailed. But they kept running. And we finally got we got far enough south, down by getting close to the 38th parallel, we came down lower altitude so we could see. And the only navigation we had was look at the ground. And yeah, at nighttime, if you've flown at night long enough, you can tell prominent objects on the ground, rivers, a mountain, or terrain, you know. And so Navigator and I watch the charts and match with what we were saying, hopefully. And well, anyway, we trying to land at a fighter base at Suwon, North Korea. It was K-13, by the way, another 13. And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and the thing was still running. We're just flying, you know, by our seat of our pants. And we got close, we saw this river. Oh yeah, and that fighter strip's right down there several miles away, but we weren't, you know, in the plane we covered it pretty quick. So I tried, finally got my radio working again. And I called some of our other ships. We knew they were up there in the air or somewhere, you know. But they were under radio silence. And everything was Morse code back then. And we've been flying long enough with some of the other crews that I could recognize the guy's hand on the key in Morse code, the way, you know, their technique.
That fixed.
And they could do the same with me. And so what we call our sister crew, we'd been all through training with them and everything. The radio operator is a very good friend of mine. He got permission to break radio silence. And we were thinking we were about 5,000 feet. And we were coming up on this airport. It was all, there were no lights, nothing, you know. And we said, man, we don't have gone through all this and then get shot down by our own people. So I talked to Joe Wisman and told him to call the tower down there and tell them to shoot up some green flares when they heard our engines. And I bet a minute didn't go by, and all of a sudden here comes a green flare right up off our nose. Guys all hollering and everything, you know. So we come in for a landing, and with minimum instruments and everything in the middle of the night. They wouldn't put any lights on the runway. They put a Jeep on each end of the runway and shined the headlights down the runway. And the runway was a fighter strip. I don't know if you've ever seen these corrugated metal strips that they make runways out of, temporary runways out of. We come in on that and put the gear down, and red lights on all 3 gears. So we prepared to crash landing, threw everything out that was loose, and we come on in, and the gear held up. So, but the strip wasn't long enough for us, so we went clear the end of the strip and then was out in the brush. Luckily it was level, pretty level, and the brush right there, so we just pulled out in the brush off to the side so we didn't block the runway. And then we called, well, and then there's 2 guys in the Jeeps come over, and I mean, we got out of that plane in a hurry, because those things, they blow and burn easy, you know. So, we got out of there real quick, and we got our wounded guys out of there, which is a trick, and had one of those guys in the Jeep, go get some ambulances, and a doctor. So they sped off in the middle of the night and got a doctor, and 2 ambulances come up, and we put those 4 guys in there. And then we jumped on the Jeeps, and we all went to an operations building, as they call it, just some temporary tin shacks. And we got in there, and we were debriefing with the operations officer there, just informally. And here comes a Catholic priest, I never will forget this, Catholic priest with bottles of VO in his arm like that, whole stack of them. And over there, they used the Canadian measurements of 40-ounce jugs. They weren't fifths, they were bigger than a fifth, you know. And handed each one of us one. And we drank that 40-ounce jug of VOs like a Coke, no chaser, nothing. And even the guys that didn't drink or smoke drank theirs and walked away. Can you imagine? We got so we could drink a whole 40-ounce bottle of thing just like a Coke and walk away. That was our treatment for shock.
I see, I see. Well, Darold, how long did you stay in the military?
4 years.
And when you, and I really do appreciate you sharing all that with us. I really, really do. And when you, after your 4 years, then what did you do?
Well, I got out and I went back to work for Associated Auto Transports over at the Mercury plant.
Where was
Ford
that?
plant over
Oh, the
in
Ford
Hazelwood.
plant in Hazelwood, okay.
And my job was, I was a final inspector for the transport company that hauled them away. There was two companies, and we were one of them. And then we were right in the end of the assembly line with their final inspectors, and doing that. And then you were in charge of the drive-out crew. They called it drive-out crew. Well, after a while, I got all of a sudden I realized those drivers that were just coming up and grabbing the car and drive off. They were in a union, and they were making more money than I was, and I was their boss. So I said, "The heck with that!" So I joined the union, and well, I joined the union. That was before I left for the service.
Okay.
And so I come back, and I was in the auto workers union. I come right up. I kept my seniority. I walked right into my job and kept right on going, you know.
Nice.
And I did that until 1958. In the meantime, I was working with the VA and going to school at Wash U under the VA bill, or GI bill rather. And I was having a heck of a time. I wanted to get in a career job. I was making pretty good money doing what I was doing compared to most people, but that wasn't my career, you know. So anyway, I had a heck of a time. And then to get in the civil service career field, you know, you had to pass all kinds of tests and have letters of recommendation and everything, which I did. And the deputy chief of the Weather Bureau, that we worked with a lot and everything, and he had to give me a letter of recommendation. So I finally got with the FAA, at that time as an air traffic controller, in 1958. I immediately went to Oklahoma City, down at Tinker Air Force Base, to go to the FAA, well, they school, but they'd call seminar or something down there, and for 8 weeks. And they crowded a whole navigational course and weather and so forth and so on in 8 weeks. They crowded the whole course in there.
It was a cram course.
Cram course. And of course, a lot of the stuff I'd worked with in the service, but also a lot that I hadn't. But anyway, it was really at 3 o'clock in the morning. A lot of times when I woke up, I had my head on the desk in the motel room and just got up, showered, changed clothes, and went on another day. But I passed that and came in and worked over at Lambert, over at the Air Traffic Control Center. It was in the old Navy base over there. And I worked there for about a year. And then they moved to Kansas. I forget where in Kansas, just west of Kansas City a little bit. And I just started. And I transferred over to the Flight Control Center. It was in the old terminal building. So I worked over there until 66, I think it was. For about 7, 8 years as an air traffic controller. And then I was dead-ended, unless I wanted to go to Fargo, North Dakota, or, you know. And then in the meantime, the Vietnam War had started, and they opened up, the Army opened up a big center down at the Record Center again. So I put in my application, passed all the tests and all that, and got called down there. And I went down there to get into computers. As it turned out, they were full, but one of the chiefs in the human resources, our personnel office back then, saw my application and so forth. And he came out and took me back in his office, and we talked, and come find out he had been in the Air Force same time I had been, and all this, and we were about the same size, and we liked all the same outdoor activities and everything. So he hired me as a position management specialist. So position pay management, I should say. And so I worked there for until I think 8 years there. Then I ended up over at the Personnel Records Center over on Page. I kept trying to, I keep that ended and I kept trying to go up. So I went over there as chief of the position pay management branch of the Human Resources. And then I worked there for 7 years till I retired. And I'd always promised myself if there was no good reason why I shouldn't retire when I'm 55, I was gonna do it.
Were you still over there on Page when they had the big fire?
Pardon?
Were you still at that place when they had the big fire?
The fire on?
Fire, no, the fire was in 73.
73?
And I retired in 84. I wasn't over there in 73. I think I went over there in 77.
I see.
Yes, I know I did, in fact. And
So they'd already done some rebuilding?
yeah, including mine. They burnt mine up too.
Oh, no.
And anyway, yeah, then I was chief of position of pay management for all those years and took over a failed program and brought it up to acceptable standards by Department of the Army 1 year. And so we had a good program. I got along good with everybody, the commanders and the people. Okay.
So you were in the military in the Air Force, and then you worked for the government?
Yeah, the Department of Army.
Did you work for the Department of Army, and you retired from the?
Department of Army.
I
They
see.
call us DACs, Department of Army Civilians. And I worked right with the uniformed military all those years. When I was 55, I had 33 years, and 55, I'm gone.
So you did retire. So what did you do then at 55?
Well,
That's young.
Well, that's another story. I piddled around trying to sell insurance and a couple of things and found out I'm not really a salesman. And then I got, let's see.
Where were you living during this time that you worked for the government?
Same place on Avery Avenue.
Well, when did you come to Avery? Actually, I think we skipped that part. When did you come to here in Bridgeton and on Avery?
It's 1976.
Was it a brand new house when you moved in?
Yeah, we had it built.
When did you get married?
1957.
So where were you then? When you got married, was this after your time in Korea?
Yeah, but yeah.
And,
And I've been working it for the auto transport.
and who did you marry?
Mildred Van Daren.
And where was she from?
She's from Van Alstyne, Texas, which is a little town I think just east of Dallas.
How did you meet her?
Well, during the war, her parents had moved up to a place in the country out there between Sullivan and Stanton, Missouri, but about 3 miles back off the highway. And I had a cousin that lived right across the street from her. And so one time, she was a real good friend with a couple of my cousins, in fact. And I went to school with them. And they brought her up to the house one time. And we went to a drive-in movie. I never will remember. Forget up here on the Rock Road.
In St. Anne?
Yeah. And it was raining, and we were sitting to it, and I had a 42 Mercury, and we were sitting there, and just the windshield wipers down. And my cousin was with us, you know. And we watched the whole movie, the windshield wipers going by.
No, that sounds like
Then I took them out and bought them an ice cream cone. But I never forget that, because they were, she's 5 years younger than me. And
Was that at the Airway or the four screen?
pardon?
Was that the Airway drive-in or the four screen?
The Airway where Shop and Save
Yeah,
is
the
on the Rock
Airway,
Road?
yeah, Airway, yeah.
Yeah, the drive-ins were very popular for a while, weren't they?
Oh, yeah, they were all over the place, yeah, and that's where the guys and gals went, you know, a lot of the time.
So did families.
Yeah, but anyway, I didn't get married till 57, and I was on my way to 29 years old.
Did you have children?
Yeah, we had a boy and a girl, and there isn't any other kind.
And did they go through the Pattonville school system?
Yes, they did, all the way through. Went to the Carrollton Elementary School, and then they went to Pattonville High School. Didn't have a middle school back then, I don't think.
Where are they living now, your children?
My son, we sent him to school. Well, he wanted to go to college, and he made good grades and everything. So I made the mistake of bringing him past the University of Colorado in Boulder one year when we were taking the kids out west. And I had some of my service buddies were going there, and they tried to get me to come out there. And 4 or 5 guys had rented a Frank Lloyd Wright house
Wow.
out there, and they wanted me to come out there, and I almost went out there, yeah, and I almost went out there, but then I met Mildred. But anyway, so we took him through the campus there, and once he saw that campus, he didn't want to go anyplace else. So anyway, we figured out a way to get him out there for 4 years, expensive. And he graduated 4 years, and he put out resumes all over the country and ended up with the May Corporation Executive Intern Program in California, in LA. And then, of course, May stores sold out, and then they got with another retail group called, I think, the Blackwell stores. And they were all over the country and even overseas too. And they ended up selling out after a few years, you know. And then he went to work for Time Warner, and in the retail section, the stores at Time Warner, and then the theme parks around the country. And they didn't merge with Time Magazine, you know,
Oh.
now it's Time Warner, and and they closed all the stores, so he lost his job there. So then some of the guys got a job at Disney, a friend of his did, and got him into Disney then. So he's still working at Disney, and he's vice president of the retail division and for stores all over the world. And he makes trips to about 5 trips a year to the Orient, India, Thailand, and regularly to Hong Kong and Shanghai.
So he's done a lot of flying as well,
Oh yeah,
but hopefully not having the close call like you had in Korea.
yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to us
Yeah.
today. You are a fascinating speaker, and it's been so much fun talking to you, and I hope you'll stay in Bridgeton a long, long time, and maybe we can visit with you again. Thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.